So just to give you, for those of you who haven't been here before, a quick sort of synopsis of what the Conference on the Couch is. The idea is to kind of really play with traditional conference formats, so not this kind of separate space where people are on a stage and the audience is, way far away, disconnected, but for us to all be in this kind of really family living room kind of space, connected to one another and talking to one another rather than talking at one another. So that's the idea of the Conference on the Couch. So today, our topic is queer space and place, and there are a couple inspirations for this panel. One is the really brilliant Queer Rebels showcase that happened a couple days ago, film showcase. If you missed it, you missed a really powerful curated selection. So I'm sure that will come into play during the conversation. And the second sad inspiration for this is our home space, which is Salvage Vanguard Theater. And the artistic director is here, Larson, which will be relocating, reimagining itself in the near future, and I'm sure it'll be fabulous, but we are very sadly losing that amazing space that's been our home for the past couple of years. So I'm sure that will be part of the conversation as well. And then lastly to mention, for those of you that didn't hear, we have not one, not two, but three birthdays on our Take it away, Kareem.
Great. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm really happy to see all of you here, and thank you, Kern and PJ, for opening your home to this conversation and for curating a phenomenal festival. Last year, Outsider was, I think, the best thing I did in Austin in my first year here, and again, it's really blowing me away. I think that the quality of programming and conversations and community is just stunning. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be in conversation with this incredible group of folks here. So we're talking about queer space and place, and I'll explain some of my investments in this very briefly. But I'd like to take a quick go around for each of you to introduce yourselves and perhaps say very briefly how you're invested in questions of space and place. Just so we have some stuff on the table that I can ask questions of and riff off of. And I'll start with birthday queen number one. And then we'll end with another birthday queen. And if you also let us know your preferred pronouns.
I'm Jesus Valles, preferred pronouns. They, them, or he. I'm cool with that too. It's fine. So I'm a performer here in Austin in interesting capacities. I don't know. And one of the reasons that I was really interested in this particular topic about space and place is because I am a Mexican immigrant. So I came to the U.S. undocumented, and I think when you remove yourself from the place you were born at, space and place are questions that you constantly have to ask yourself and not just words. So that's why
Hi, I'm Celeste Chan. It's not my birthday. I wish it were. And my pronouns are she, her, or fabulous. I'm a queer Asian American artivist based in San Francisco. Also self-identified nerd. If you see me taking notes, it's just how I think the best. Oh, I write too. And I'm the co-director of Queer Rebels. And I think these questions of space and place, I think riffing off of what you said, I'm also a child of immigrants, an immigrant from Malaysia, an immigrant from the Bronx. Yes, that's New York. So I think I'm constantly looking at questions of, in my art, questions of what is home, how do you make a home, and then also being displaced from history and heritage. So.
My name is KB. My pronouns are they, them. I am based in San Francisco. I am a lifetime musician, filmmaker, activist, and let's see. What am I forgetting? Oh, co-director.
OG Afropunk.
Right, OG Afropunk. From way back. way back, and co-director of Queer Rebels with Celeste. As far as the topic, yeah, there's just so much going on. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and Brooklyn, like everywhere else, there's just a lot of change going on and displacement happening, and as a queer artist, it's just in the forefront of my thoughts. And in fact, that's why our program was what it was. And, yeah. Next.
I'm Jenny. It is my birthday. She, her. I run Salvage, Vanguard Theater. Also fancy myself an actor, director, artist, and space is obviously very important to me right now because we're losing ours in 4 months.
You're on the couch. I'm Khattie. I do stuff around town. Yes, I'm from Puerto Rico, but I've lived in Austin for a long time. And so home is question mark for me at this point. But I can't wait to hear from everybody. Thank you.
I'm Silky. She or I don't know. I don't care about pronouns. I'm a performer and event organizer. I lived in Austin for 10 years and I just moved away. And I guess I'm interested. I like creating collaborative, like not capitalist kind of community spaces, events that are created interactively and collaboratively. So yeah, I'm interested in how when like a city like Austin shifts and grows, queer community and queer space can be maintained in a DIY way.
And I'm Susan, and I wrote this little thing. I'm a card-carrying, Birkenstock-wearing, lesbian feminist, striving to keep the dream or the dreams of equality, imagination, a safe place alive here in Austin, which I've been trying for 40 years. And that was interesting. You made me think about Succession of the bookstore. I've been doing it for 40 years. What's going to happen when I don't do it anymore? So to reimagine Bookwoman as a queer space in the future would be very interesting to hear your ideas about that.
I'm Nakia. I am a singer and a songwriter, and over the last few years kind of began getting into advocacy for artists here in Austin, and served on the Austin Music Commission and some other boards where I felt like I could give a voice to those artists. And I don't really care what you call me, just don't call me late for supper. I wasn't really, when Karen asked me to do this, I sat for a minute. I thought, okay, what do I really know about this? And then I started thinking about, the various venues that I perform at that are no longer with us, the venues that are closing. And then once I got the email from you, Kareem, I really it really hit me just how much queer space is so vital to me in my life and has been for a very long time. So I'm really excited about the conversations.
Great, thank you all so much. I think this promises to be a really rich discussion, and I think what I might do is direct some questions because it seems like to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, but also feel free to chime in where you'd like. So again, my name is Kareem. My pronouns are he, him, or auntie. She's embracing it. But I'm at the University of Texas at Austin, and I research queer nightlife, and I teach a class on queer nightlife. And I think in some ways nightlife has been lauded as the place of queer community for many sort of discursive reasons, one being Stonewall and the Compton cafeteria riots, and that being a place of being imagined as the place where a movement started, not the movement, but perhaps a movement of the LGBTQ. At various points it's shifted. But when we think about nightlife, as this place of escape from the mundanity of capitalism and labor, at times we're entering other capitalist spaces where people are laboring, right? And we think that we're going to escape, but there are other people trying to make a living at the same time as we're there. There's supposed to be escapes from heteronormativity, but in fact there's all kinds of gender reinforcement happening in those spaces. If we from thinking about Stone Butch Blues and the way Les Feinberg talks about gender in the lesbian bar to the mask for mask culture of gay bars today, right? So there are all these disciplinings happening in these spaces that are supposed to sort of allow us to escape normativity. One of the things I research when I think about queer nightlife is how people travel to queer nightlife, how diasporic subjects make the pilgrimage back to India just to find the queer community there, or how people from non-Western countries imagine the U.S. as the place to travel to see the nightlife that they've watched in the telescope that they illegally downloaded, right? Or the imagination that there's no room for queer nightlife in rural America, where Mary Gray, a scholar, talks about in a small rural town, these young kids go and do fashion shows at Walmart, capitalizing on Walmart's customer service policy of not kicking people out and always being nice. And they're open 24/7. So at 3 in the morning, these kids are dancing and doing fashion shows at Walmart. Right? So I think that I'd love for this conversation to take these macro and micro approaches. Of like what are the massive expanses of space we might travel across, and what are the specificities of particular places, such as Austin's East Side, that are seeing particular kinds of displacements that we might think about. So I think I'll start with I started with my own little origin story of how I come to this, but I think origin stories are a great place to get to know folks and how they think of themselves and how they position themselves. So I'd love to know from any of you, it doesn't have to be all of you, but what are your first memories of either imagining a queer space or actually discovering it, or just knowing of one?
Well, I grew up in New York, so in Brooklyn, and I was pretty young when I discovered the Village right across the bridge. And so this was late 70s, and I was a punk rocker, and I would get to see little snippets of white gay men mainly, but it was a thought that, wow, well, there are gay people, because in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, at that time, there weren't really any. I couldn't find any kind of community, and it didn't occur to me to even look for community, because it didn't occur to me. It just, until I saw little snippets in the Village, and that changed things. So that was the mecca, just go to the Village and cross the bridge and everything will be great, but not really. But thought I'd throw that out there.
I grew up doing musical theater.
Would you like to expand, or is that?
I grew up doing musical theater in the early 90s in Pennsylvania area mostly, which is actually an interesting from a child's brain to sort of see snippets of that time period with gay men. And I mean backstage and bars after the show is like mostly the culture that I would see, but there was sort of some like footsteps down the hall of people getting sick, you know, like the AIDS crisis. I don't remember consciously being aware of that, but I do know at some point I like went door to door in my neighborhood and was like, I'm raising money for AIDS research. So I think I knew that I sort of knew people were gay, and also that there was this thing happening, but I kind of didn't consciously know what it was. And then I was also the Ani DeFranco's biggest fan.
I
And I would spend weekends as much as possible driving around going to Ani concerts, which was really fun as an underage queer to be in just like seas of dykes. Yeah.
So you identified as queer in high school?
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things. When I was in college, after a night of drinking, coming back to the dorm, and there would be several women who would be falling down drunk. And so there was no nightlife really in this small college town in the Bible Belt of East Texas. And especially Susie Korn would need many women to help her stand and put her to bed and hold her hand and comb her hair. Remove her shoes. And so what I realized later is that she really needed touching and community, and to have a crisis was the best way to get women to give you attention. So that was something I often wonder, is Susie Korn now queer? But I haven't been able to find her. And then secondly, my freshman summer or Christmas vacation, first year of college, I was in the tool department at Sears. Before the Home Depot with my dad, and I saw the most beautiful, huge, magnificent bull dyke with slick back hair, a white shirt, cuffs rolled up, big leather belt, motorcycle boots, and I went, oh my God, I somehow know her. And realized that was kind of the Ring of Keys moment, if you all know Fun Home. And so these two things happened in the same year, and I realized that, well, I didn't know any gay men, I didn't really know about lesbian culture, but I saw that my identity was somehow tied to these two particular things, and are they just floating in space? You know, are there places?
Yeah. I can't wait for the musical about your life called Is Susie Korn Now Queer? I think what you talked about in terms of crisis as a moment to ask for community is one of the things I'll ask later is what are the rituals or embodiments that we might enact to make queer space? You know, even if a space is not marked as such. But what are the things we can do amongst and with each other to create community? I'd like to ask about when is home a queer space and when is it not? Someone like Gloria Anzaldúa asks us to think about how when we enter queer communities, we're asked to perhaps reject, especially as people of color, we're asked to reject home. We're thought to, our homes are assumed to be homophobic spaces, right? But on the other hand, when is home not a safe space, especially when it comes to issues of domestic violence? And how do we reconcile the notion of home? And it doesn't, and I'm not necessarily asking in the sense of the biological term, family and home, but you know, when is home queer, or how do we queer home, and when is it not, and when do we need to say this home is not my home anymore?
Well, for me, I grew up in Alabama, and as a very young child, very young, I knew that I was different, and looking back, I probably knew that I was queer, but I didn't know that's what it was. And I was getting in a lot of trouble for pretending to be Wonder Woman, or taking my clothes off and dancing around in the neighborhood or whatever. And home was pretty violent for me. When I was a kid, my dad was very, very violent and very physical in his response to me and to some of these things. And for me, I found a way to kind of imagine my own, queer space at home by, convincing my father to build me a treehouse in the backyard that I then turned into, my own kind of Madison Square Garden kind of thing. I became obsessed with Kiss. I saw them as like the ultimate escape, because they were becoming these massive monsters, of rock, that they could be these other people. And so I would get on the top of my treehouse and I would, sing as loud as I could and dance around and, lip sync or whatever. Even with, kids at this point, I was already beginning to experiment sexually. So there was getting a lot of backlash from kids in my neighborhood who I was approaching. They would be shooting bottle rockets at me or calling me faggot, but I would be on top of my treehouse in my fence, basically saying, fuck you, I'm going to do this anyway, So that was really where I was kind of, almost forced into creating or imagining my own queer space. It wasn't until I moved to Atlanta in the 90s, and somehow or another I stumbled into the Eagle, and I looked down on the dance floor at one point, and I also stumbled in on Girth and Mirth Night, which I didn't really know what it was. And I looked out on the dance floor, and all these big bears were taking off their shirts. And I almost started crying. I was like, oh my God, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so I took off my shirt and danced and danced, until I couldn't dance anymore. And it also happened to be their whatever anniversary they were celebrating. They had a big balloon drop, and in the balloons they had prizes, and I got a couple. One was a bar tab, one was a T-shirt, and one was something that said that I had to turn in at the gift shop, which I didn't know why they would have this, but it was VHS head cleaner. I was so confused because DVDs were already out, and so I took the thing up to the guy, and he said, "Oh, honey, we're already out of that. Here, have another T-shirt." And so I didn't get any VHS.
Yeah, just to pick up the Poppers flag. The story has nothing to do with Poppers, but I feel inspired now. As one does. So I grew up in Ciudad Juárez, in Mexico, and I think for the world, that city has always been painted as this place where nothing can live, right? Because since the 1990s, obviously, like, thousands of women have been, like, murdered there. The Mexican government says hundreds, but... and so growing up as, like, a potito there was interesting and confusing, because for every guy in my first grade school that'd be like, what the? There was also these, like, fabulous queens who my sisters hung out with in the neighborhood. Saul. There was one person named La Adan, so it's like Adan, which is Adam, but they put La in front of her name because she was supreme. And Yessie, not Jessie, with a Y. And my sisters would hang out with them, and for my sister Jessica's birthday, Saul was like, I'm going to give you a gift. And she was like, what is it? She's like, just wait. And one day, I happened to watch these three queens. They were watching a recording of Madonna's VMA performance of Vogue with like the powdered wigs and just like white. And these brown queens were doing all of this beautiful choreography that this white woman had access to in the United States, and they were bringing it here. And so they were like importing this like queerness that didn't live here, but it also did. And so I remember just watching and thinking like, on that side, things are different. When we finally moved here, I went to, years later, when I had finally said like, I am gay, and also like, that was the first word that I identified with, was gay, and not joto, and now I'm more comfortable with joto, and not so much with gay. But in middle school when I said I'm gay, and like went through high school, and at 16, my friend Carlos snuck me into this bar called Chiquitas, which is in El Paso, Texas. And if you ever happen to be in El Paso, Texas, please go to Chiquitas. It is the only place where strippers share the same space as a crock pot of nacho cheese. And brisket and menudo on Sundays. And like, if you've never had menudo at a gay bar while being like, I think that's taint I'm smelling, like, then you're like, but I remember walking into this bar, and when I walked in, I shit you not, because I cannot, like, this was such a fucking gift. The first thing I hear, and I only think people like, I don't know who'll get this, but if you don't, like, please look her up. Paquita la del Barrio, who is a Mexican singer with like shocking like blonde hair and like a mole, and she's like actually kind of homophobic, but I also kind of love her. It's weird, it's complex. Yeah, it's really weird. But I walk into a song called Rata de Dos Patas, in which she compares this man to like a rat and like a bug, and just like she's essentially like, you're fucking basic and get out of my life. And I remember listening to that song in Juarez when my mom would clean the house, when she found out that my dad was cheating on her, and even though she stayed with him, she would listen to these songs while she cleaned and while she ironed his shirt so that he could go out at night. And I'd already made it to that side where I thought Madonna and powdered wigs were possible, and now on this other side was the place I called home. And I think that's when I was like, I'm cool with joto. Joto feels good. Joto feels home. So.
Before we move on to other questions, I don't want to leave the question of home without giving Katie and Celeste a chance to think about this, since this is something they spent the year curating and imagining.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I need to lift up the Poppers flag, but I don't know. I'm trying. All right. So I have a couple thoughts. I mean, I think at first I'm like, no, home isn't a queer place. But then I'm like, which home are we talking about? And thinking back to family of origin, like I just remember this moment. I was 16. I was going to a school interview with my mom, who was wearing a floor-length fake fur coat. She's a size 24, stonewashed jeans, some campus high tops, and I think I had just come out then. I was 16, and I don't know. It didn't hit me until later that maybe like what makes a queer family? What makes something queer? Like oddness and aberration and non-normativity, and so it sort of gave me like a new lens to look back and be like, oh, what, I'm like, these are straight people, but actually like there's something else going in there. Like queerness was kind of a lens to understand family and race and class and my experience growing up. Let me see, what else do I, okay, second point was home as in community of origin, or the community that you came out in, and I'm just thinking of, I came out in Seattle and then later moved to Olympia, post Riot Girl period, I was like, I'm getting on this train. Oh, it left already. I mean, there were still people there. There were still secret cafes, ladies mud wrestling, that's what they called it then, drag shows, Homo a Go-Go, all that stuff. And yeah, so on the one hand, and I think before I went there, I was like, oh, it's going to be like Dyke March every day because I'd gone to these big festivals there where it's like queers take over this tiny, tiny town. But then I got there and I was like, oh, this is not Dyke March every day. This is a way smaller town than what I come from. And there's 2 main streets. But going back around to my point, I think I was wondering, I mean, it was super inspiring there. I think the DIY stuff has definitely stayed with me. But I also wonder about, like, what makes something queer? And what about, like, when whiteness is the unspoken norm, what's queerness within that? What is really queer? You know, what's the aberration? What's the non-normativity? What's breaking out of that? I feel like I have a third one for you, but I don't want to take up too much time. If I think of it quickly, I'll throw it in.
Thoughts on that. Like I said, I grew up, I didn't really have queer community. I grew up in New York, late 70s. I was a punk rocker playing at nightclubs, and the punk scene was very white and very, I don't know, it drew me in because I felt like I could just be a freak, even though I couldn't find any other queers of color, or punks of color, hardly, actually. But that was kind of, that's just the way it was, and my family in Brooklyn, even though we were in Bed-Stuy, and back in those days, you didn't really see any white folks in Bed-Stuy. You saw it was mainly African-American, Puerto Rican, Bed-Stuy. But yet in that, my family was kind of the freaky family of the area because I'm very blessed that there are artists in my family, visual artists. My dad was a musician. But we were the freaks and black nationalists. There was a lot of, we wore a lot of dashikis and that kind of thing. So we were freaks in the neighborhood. So I was kind of used to feeling like an outsider, but it just continued. It's like I figured out I was queer. And I identified as queer even back then. No one else was saying queer really, but I felt queer because even a little later when I met lesbians in the village, I didn't fit in. I didn't feel right. It didn't work out. So I can consider myself queer, and it's a backdrop from my being with my family. My family, even though they're very straight and all that, they were always freaks and a little strange and supportive of me. So I'm very blessed in that way. But train of thought, losing it. I'm tired, Jerry.
I'll pick up on it. So, my coming out was in New York. I was 17 years old and I came to the U.S. from Ghana, and I was in Central Park and I was staring at these 2 men who were like sunning shirtless and like for 30 minutes they had their conversation, whatever, their date, I guess, and they're leaving Central Park to Sheep's Meadow, and I go racing after them, and put my hand on their shoulder, and they're like 2 really big buff men, and they turn around and I was like, "Excuse me, are you gay?" And they're like, "It depends who's asking." And they were really sweet. They were having an affair. So one of them had come in from Jersey to have this date, and they were on their way to fuck, and then this 17-year-old is like, "Hi." But one of them, the one who lived in New York, was like, "No, whenever you're in New York, like come see me," because I went to college upstate. And I came to see him, and he's like, well, I called him, and he's like, "I can't take you to a bar, but do you want to meet at the Big Cup, which is a coffee shop in New York and Chelsea?" So that was like my first space, right? And the Big Cup is now the ugliest lighting store you've ever seen. And Chelsea, which was for a moment a gay mecca, is now stroller families and strollers and lighting in furniture stores, right? So I'd like to, like, in the spirit of that, I'd like to ask what queer spaces are we losing or have we lost and why? And I'm gonna start with you, Jenny. Not for the purposes of mourning, but to ask, how we imagine a future as well,
Yeah.
and how we invested in this as a space.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's I've been thinking about that, sort of like, why are we losing this place? And of course, I mean, it seems so obvious, but just to put it into the room, it's because we're not interested in making a bunch of money. It's like, that's not where the intention comes from, that's not where the action comes from, it's not how we even view sustaining ourselves. The productions at Salvage Vanguard, like $25 for a ticket is like the highest you're gonna see. And for our own shows, it's $10. A lot of people, it's $5. So we are so much more interested in creating that open space for connection, communication, dialogue, conversation, transformation, and making it safe and inclusive. Like, those are our goals. And you're talking about home and like, when is home queer and when is it not? And my brain was going through these sort of like more political levels. Like, I'm from South Dakota, which has been in the news this week because of these horrible transgender laws they're trying to enact. So then there's, for me, I'm like, that's not home anymore. I can't even be in that state anymore. And then I think about Austin. So Austin is changing so much, and I mean, it's like goods and bads, right? Because like, the bigger it gets, maybe there's more opportunity for it to become more metropolitan. Maybe it can become and feel more international, but we're not there yet. And we're in a place now where the influx is this white upper middle class money, and that's what the city has been trying to attract for years. And so now it's like this speeding train has gone too far too fast. And so then it does become like, okay, so how do we find space for ourselves? And I think it's a mixed thing of like, it's DIY, and it's also, there are a few good people in the world, like, I can, just to put some like positive, like, so that you guys know, like, I'm in communication with a benefactor who has property that he's willing to rent to us for like 80 cents a square foot, and it's only a couple blocks from SBT, and it's not done yet, and I'll make an announcement when I can, but there are good people still in Austin who are stepping up, and so that's a short term, and that we're in conversation, and it will not be the same sort of like built out theater, but it will have event space that we can transform into whatever we need it to be. And then in the long term, again, like, I've got benefactors who are like, we care about preserving this in Austin. So even though it feels like the larger city temperament is definitely one of capitalist interests, there are still good people and good pockets of people everywhere. And then, I mean, we'll get creative about how we do it. Like, I just think about your introduction of like, I'm interested in space in this DIY way. I think that more and more that's what we have to embrace.
Silky, I'd love to hear from how you imagine creating spaces outside of, or by mediating capitalist contexts, and what you've done, what projects you've worked on.
Yeah, well, the longest project that I worked on was GayBiGayGay.
Yes.
Which is my friend Hazy and I, with the help of a ton of people, did, for anyone I don't know that doesn't know of it, it was a queer music festival that we did on the last day of South by for 10 years, and we decided not to do it this year and sort of retire it. But yeah, and the reason, so we started it, our friend Adrian was like, you should have a queer party, music event during South by, because there wasn't really something like that at that time. So we had like a scrap of, like, I think from the garbage across the street, we rolled out a piece of carpet and like put Gretchen Phillips on there with the guitar. And we had like a little suitcase PA, and and the focus of it was always to not make money. Like we really, it was free and not sponsored, and it was BYOB, and we really tried to make it feel like that. I think there's just that beautiful feeling where when you go somewhere, especially to me with like gay events, sometimes it's sometimes rare, but when you show up and you know that you're not there because people are trying to make money off of you, and so that was really our interest. But GayBi just kept getting bigger and bigger, and we couldn't do it in the backyard anymore, and it became increasingly hard to find a space to do it that wasn't already a venue, and we didn't want to do it in a venue because we wanted it to be BYOB and all ages and stuff. So so in a way we were a victim of our own success, in that there's it's hard to find an infrastructure for like an anarchist party that like attracts 2,000.
But GayBi was, I mean, really, it was all ages. So a lot of people were probably experiencing their first queer space.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Yeah,
You know.
God. I saw that with Queer Bomb and GayBi in the last few years, especially like little gay babies showing up. And I love that about Austin. That's something that I think is particular here. I noticed like with my dyke community here, that how intergenerational it is, and how like punk and all the old rocker dykes, and then younger ones coming in, which I think can happen more when it is a space that's like DIY, and when you're trying, I mean, on one hand it's like, oh, I'm just being a cheapskate, and I really am like leaning on all my friends to get their help to throw this party, which is one way I sometimes look at it. But then on the other hand, it's like, I really love when there's not money involved and you have to be creative about the ways that you make this space, and that means you're calling everyone in your phone and making them come. And like last night, like Eric Nix got an army of people to show up and put their buttholes on the movie wall. Yeah. A handful, so to speak.
Well, speaking of buttholes, and places that never made any money and that were amazing.
Chain drive?
Chain drive. I mean, up until it closed, not the second time, but not after it tried to move, but up until it closed, I've been doing, DJ nights there and stuff. But when I first moved here, it was the first place that I felt safe. There were no windows. It was completely dark and black, and it smelled, and the drinks were really stiff, and they were really cheap. And I could walk outside and smoke a joint, or I could get my dick sucked, or I could suck a dick, or I could play it in a band, whatever, it didn't matter. That place was safe and welcoming, and I met so many amazing people there, queer, not queer. It was such a great space, and it was so sad to see it go. And I don't want to mourn it, because I feel like it should be celebrated. It really was a space that gave a home to so many people. And for years, even though they weren't making any money, they raised thousands of dollars there for AIDS-related charities and Toys for Tots, and all kinds of really great stuff came out of that place. I saw Christine pull a bloody tampon out of her ass or something. Maybe it was a. Was it a?
Bloody tampon.
Was it a? And she threw it at somebody's face, and when it hit them, it was just like somebody had just put holy water on it. It was amazing. So, when I think about that space, and I think about, again, probably one of the first queer places that many people ventured into, certainly a place that felt safe and was home, and that we no longer have. We've got some queer spaces like around, but nothing like that. And nor do I don't know that will we again? What place in its right mind goes and opens a business where there's no windows and it's just, I don't know, it's great.
I just like to say too on the I think that chain drive had like 7 official closing parties.
That's right, yeah.
The last one, Paul and I went and everyone was there and there was dancing and whatnot, and then the night, it was 2 a.m. and everyone left except for a small core, and the DJ was playing videos of Liza Minnelli and Ethel Merman. My last memory is of me and Paul and Stanley and a chorus line of leather fags in gear doing a kick line.
So I actually before I move in and open it up to the audience, I'd like to hear from you, Susan, about how you think of a Bookwoman surviving. Given that it has a home, and how you think of it institutionalizing or sort of diffusing into the community and what you're thinking about.
Yeah, it has a home for now, but without me, I don't see it surviving. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of moving parts to make it work. One of my employees is here today. Hi, Dana. And she's been instrumental in helping prop me up to continue to make the space available. I do conferences to make money. People walk in and buy things that probably doesn't really pay the rent, but the other really full-time job is to have it be a community space for events and signings and poetry readings and film presentations, and that we do that 2, 3, 4 times a week. So, y'all might not know that. If you want to do an event, let's see if we can do it. We're open to it. We're going to do a South by Music festival. And we have 16 women performers coming in. And that's very exciting. And so it's this piecemeal community, really. And I have trouble envisioning it going forward into the modern queer world and the modern world of Austin. If we lose our lease, I don't think we can afford anything in the city. And one thought was to maybe partner with the Women's Center, but I think it's falling apart. I don't really have the details about that. But I think it needs a person or maybe a triumvirate of people to come in and decide, what to do with it when I'm done with it.
I think one thing to acknowledge also in Austin is that as things become less affordable, specifically Black and Latino folks are being displaced out of the city, and I think raises a conversation that also has to do with space and place. I'll also mention a couple of other questions I put down there, but I think that have been touched on, so I'm not going to push them and allow the conversation to move forward. But how does travel and migration have produce or enable or prohibit queerness and queer community and queer space? How do we think about the literal physicality of a space and how it produces queerness? So that the darkness of the club, Jack Halberstam talks about when you walk into a club and have to move through a dark tunnel to get to another place. How do you? It's that ritual of like entering a new space, right? So how like sometimes it's the lights that or the sensations of sound that produce an experience in our bodies that make us feel like we're with other people. And then also, what are the practices? What are the things we do with each other? Whether it's touching the hair of someone else and making them feel at home, or whether it's throwing a bloody pantyhose tampon and giving people joy, right? But there are certain enactments we do that change the space. So those are some of the things I wanted us to touch on. But I want to open the space up. I think we have a brilliant panel of thinkers and artists and laborers who are making space, right, for all of us. So I like tap into them and ask them questions, and also hopefully offer your own thoughts and ideas.
I want to say one more thing that I didn't get to say.
Oh.
When I met Nakia, he went to Breed hardware store looking for a big gay flag to fly, and they sent him to Bookwoman. And so he said, "Give me your biggest gay flag," and the one hanging in the window is the Texas gay flag with the star. And so he bought it and left, and he told me the purpose of the flag is that the house next door was for sale. And he wanted the people moving in next door into the neighborhood to know what they were getting. You claim gay space, but it happens to be in my corridor of travel every morning.
Which I didn't know until today.
And so
Wow.
every day I think about you, and every day I'm so happy to see a rainbow flag because it changes the whole nature of my trip and the community.
Well, you can thank Breed Hardware for having the most queer name for a hardware store, and for suggesting your store. But thank you for that. That's very sweet.
company.
For real?
So, questions, comments, concerns, jokes, snide remarks. Most of those are welcome. Yes, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'm Jim Florat. I ran very successful queer, wasn't the word that we used in the early 80s. And language is always sort of viral here. So just bear with me. If I say the wrong word, get my intention. And they were very, very successful clubs, and they were very much formatted. I think, KT, you went to some of
KB.
them.
And yes, I did. I used to go to your class.
And the way it was organized, it was going to be a mixed club, meaning it wasn't just a queer space or a gay space or a lesbian space, but it was a feminist space. And what that meant is that we had a door policy. You know, we didn't let everyone couldn't get in, and we had a very queer person at the door. And basically who couldn't get in were groups of straight men, because women felt unsafe in those kinds of environments. And our criteria was to make it a safe place for women and gay people. And then, being in New York City, all the hipsters wanted to come too, so they learned how to behave properly. Everyone got laid. No one was raped. There were no fights. All the security people were women. You know, I mean, it was just how you set a tone. And those clubs were very, very successful, and you won't read about them in the history of clubs in New York City because the straight men that write those histories called it a gay club. They were the most successful mixed clubs. So I think that kind of feeling's sake, our bathrooms were gender neutral before we had that word,
Right.
because people would make out in them. Not just gay boys. I mean, they were large with many stalls and mirrors, and it was a very social scene in the bathroom. Again, people felt safe in there. And my doorman told me that he would see some of these straight boys that would come, and not get in. He would always suggest where they could go where they'd feel more comfortable. Wasn't it? They would come
Go to
holding
Bookwoman.
hands.
Interesting.
And he had a little policy that was, if he said, could you just wait over there for a little bit? And most straight guys, and some gay guys, but most straight guys could not wait. You know, they'd get hostile, and you know you don't want them in the club.
Right.
But if they would be patient, you know, they would get into the club. And I think that that really queered everybody in that sense of who was dominant. You know, what was the environment. I remember going to Chain Gang, you know, the first time, and South by Southwest was so fucking straight, you know. It was just so, and there were a lot of dykes around, but there were no gay men. I never saw a gay man around South by for years and years and years. There were lesbians and dykes and Gretchen. You know? and I say that with complete respect for Gretchen and what she and her musician friends did. But I remember going to that dark space where you could get your dick sucked, or you could get a good drink, or you could have a conversation, or you could, you know, and I was shocked that it was that close to the convention center. And there was a little bar that was down the street that was more third world, more queers of color and hustlers. I don't remember what it was called. But there's been a history, you know, the Harlem Renaissance. There's been a history of spaces which we might not call queer spaces, but I think they absolutely were queer spaces, because who's in charge, even if it's the mob, you know, who the space is for, and who sets the tone. And I've always, you know, I believe that you mix people up together, and because music has no gender, the beat has no, you know, on the dance floor, more breaking down of the things that keep us apart, you know, happens because people just will dance to that groove. And I used to put a lot of gay bands on, and I had a very, very big name bands, Devo, people like that. And I remember there was this band called Human Sexual Response from Boston. There was no way they could hide who they were, you know, and they were really good. But I can remember some of my straight music critic types, you know, go, oh, they're a little theatrical, Jim, don't you think? And I knew theatrical meant they're too and when I went to Chances for the first time, I think Gretchen and two nice girls said, let's go to Chances. I remember thinking, that's the only club in that whole downtown that was different, you know, that was different. It's the same way with Cheer Up Charlie's. The first time I came to Cheer Up Charlie's when it was before it moved there. So we've always been able to carve out a small town gay bar. If you haven't seen Small Town Gay Bar, which is a documentary about a bar in the South where everyone who was a freak went. You know, the motorcycle people, the poets, the fags, the dykes, everyone, because there's always that one place in those small places. And it was out in the woods, and it would occasionally be burned down by the Klan or whatever. But we're like cockroaches. You know, we find our spaces, and we need culture. You know, we need culture. So there's a bookstore in New York City now called the
Jim, I'd like to make space for them to respond as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone want to respond, or?
I want to know the name of the bookstore.
I'll just tell you the name. It's called the General Services, the Bureau of General Services, Queer Division. It's zines and performance. And it's in the LGBT Center now. And people that would never go to the LGBT Center are queer people who would never go there, now go because that space is there.
In Austin? No, New York.
From New York. Well, riffing off of that idea of the physicality of the space, I guess I'm thinking of space as more, I don't know, I'm thinking of like ephemeral homes and how do we, what makes a queer space? How do we keep making and recreating queer spaces? And I love hearing these different stories. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see it. Liza Minnelli, yes, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, I think with Queer Rebels, part of our wanting to organize this, wanting to make this, was wanting to create an artistic home for queer and trans artists of color, and wanting to have that be like a really broad spectrum of what that means. in terms of who you are, your experience, whether you're a transnational adoptee or you grew up in Bed-Stuy, or you grew up in Idaho as a mixed race person raised by a single white mom. And to really have space for all of those experiences, I think we really get considered to be like, oh, you're this one thing, and here's like the thing that you are, and that's how you be authentic. And I'm like, I couldn't be authentic to save my life. I mean, it's just like life experience or culture. So.
And I think that's why some of those bars don't get called queer bars,
Yeah,
right? So there's
totally.
I think the way authenticity and labels come to mark a space, but also the fact that we need something to mark something to know that we're allowed to go and cross that threshold, right? So I think, you know, the question of labels and thresholds and just, you know, the bouncer and the labor of the person at the door who says, hey, welcome, or can you give us a minute? Like, all of, like, so what are the things we do? What is our signage? What do we write in our descriptions? What do we call our artistic name?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, so I'm super interested. Don't worry, I'm not just a killjoy. I do like to ask a lot of questions though. But yeah, I'm really interested in, despite all the displacement, how do we keep making and recreating these spaces? Yeah.
I think, I don't know, so coming from, before I moved to Austin, I was in Long Beach, California, and even while there was a lot of, when you went to, like, let's go to the club, or, like, let's go to the bar, the performances and kinds of sexualities that people were thinking of when they thought gay bar or queer bar were almost always, like, very white, very masculine performances of sexuality, even when they were being done by people who weren't. And so when I came here, I was like, where are the brown people at? Like, where are the brown people at? Where are the brown people at? Please, God, where are the brown people at? And you found it in very interesting, secret, strange pockets, and you found it, the way I found it really was by sleeping with people. Like, I would like hook up with people and I'd be like, where do you go? And I was hooking up with this guy named Jorge for a while, and he was Hondureño. And he was here undocumented for a while, ended up getting a kind of sort of asylum visa, sort of, because of his circumstances, and we talked a lot about these things. And he used to tell me all these stories about like Charlie's and like Rainbow Mining Company. Was that something that happened?
Radio Academy.
And he was like, little by little, these spaces just started disappearing. And I was like, well, where do brown people go? And he was like, a lot of us either just kind of like stuck around at OCH, or we would instead go to like Carnaval or Coliseo, which are like the Latino bars here, but they're like, if you want to do like cumbia, norteña, banda, whatever, if you're feeling that flavor, like that's where you go, but they're mostly straight spaces. And so he's like, a lot of us just went there, and so now we had to perform this kind of Latinidad that also was a little bit like, let's tone down the wrists, but let's also not tone down. So it was really like a lot of interesting negotiations where it's like, well, we have like, it's the second migration, right? Like you come here from this other country and you're like, I found brown people, and then you don't feel comfortable in the space with like the brown people because like all of the gay people are real white, so you move to a place with more brown people, but then the heterosexual, it's a clusterfuck. So last year, I went to About Time 2, which is, I love that place because it is so real. Because it used to be an old Fuddruckers and it kept its fucking hamburger handles. And I went on a Sunday and they were like chetos. There were people who looked like my tios, like just dancing cheek to cheek. And like for me, like there's such hope in that because like in like. Since I was a little boy, I was just like fantasizing like someday, like I don't know, maybe I want to date a narco. Like, can I have that? Can I have that option? You know what I mean? Like, can I have the option of like, can I have the option of a tejana? can I have the option of dancing next to someone who can sing like Sonora Dinamita in my ear and like smell like Aspen and like Presidente? Like I want that shit. And I think like to go back to this idea, like to have that kind of desire always be something that you have to be ready to like move with you, because you never know when like a place is gonna get bought out or the lease is going to be too expensive. To always have to know and feel the actual literal pain of having to like put your like all of your belongings and your desires in suspension and move them through a city to find a place where you may have to move again is painful. And I for me it's something that I keep thinking about a lot as I go to places and I see like seeds of hope and then you see a fucking motel move in or a hotel move in. I do a lot of shows at the Mac with Teatro Vivo, and this thing called the Hotel Van Zandt just went up. And the other day I was walking to rehearsal, and this guy was on his phone. He's like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm staying at this it's like a little boutique hotel called the Van Zandt. The Van Zandt is a giant fucking black building with all these windows." I'm like, "Where the fuck is this a boutique?" And also like, you have no idea that the space we rehearse at is a rehearsal space, is a place where like Latinos can go and just like feel with people, because to you it's the place adjacent to your hotel, and to the people in the condos it's a place where their dogs can take a shit. Like, leave.
It's interesting that the inside of Hotel Van Zandt is a club called Geraldine's, and they're one of the first clubs in a long time that have been offering real guarantees to musicians in town. And a woman I know who is queer, pretty sure, I don't want to out her I guess, but anyway, I'm pretty sure she's queer, is booking it, and has booked some pretty queer friendly acts, which I think is really cool. I haven't been in there yet, but she's asked me to perform there. When you were talking about the leases and the hotels, I mean, obviously Chain Drive's right down the street from there, or was. Now there's, I think it's a hotel or a condo or something there, but there's a study that came out last year that I was a part of, that's the Austin Music Survey, or Austin Music Census, that was really in-depth and intense, where we surveyed about 4,000 different musicians and venue owners and people in the music business, many of which who are queer, many of which are closeted, and the hard numbers from that was basically that the majority of all of Austin's music business is living in what the government considers poverty or well below it, which is no secret to us because we're the ones doing it, right? But we're trying to use that data to help us with things like affordability and getting the word out to people to go to more shows. Now the Austin Creative Alliance, who I'm sure you're really familiar with, has a new survey that's just come out that they said that 52% of the 230 venues they surveyed don't think that they'll be able to renew their lease when it comes up. Oh. That's a lot of fucking queer spaces that are going to be gone. And they primarily deal with theaters. But, I think I know we're running short on time, but maybe, the last bit we could talk a little bit more about, what can we do to make a difference? I mean, I also want to say we're in a queer space right now. Yeah. And Outsider is providing such an amazing space and enabling such great conversation. So, what else can we do? How can we take this lead from Outsider and make it more of a thing? Because we're losing it faster than we can work, I think.
I'm curious. I have a question. Like, everybody in the room, pretty much, like a lot of the places you all mentioned, they're bars. And because they were hiding places and they didn't have windows, but bars really are such a piece of our space, and I think a lot of the times when I think about maybe perhaps when we were younger, like it was a place to hide, and it was a place to find our people, and now like a lot of our people obtaining rights and mixing more into the mainstream world. those spaces, those bars that were secretive spaces or places of gathering, sometimes perhaps are they unnecessary now because we're welcome into the world with these new rights. So the bars, I think, were safe havens. When now obtaining rights, you lose the meaning of what that safe haven was, or the need for it. And I'm curious as to y'all in the panel, like, do you ever think about opening your own bar, your own space? Because I mean, really, like, a lot of us found our place in a bar, and I personally think, and I've spoken with friends of mine, specifically in Austin, we don't have that gay bar anymore. You know, like, I think about like the Chain Drive or Charlie's, and like I recently did a tour of the old bars for Gretchen was really happy because like we did a tour of town, and I took these people who were documenting Austin's gay scene. I took them to every bar that shut down, and I only talked about dykes. You know? And I was like, these are the people of Austin, you know? And it was really sad though to go by Charlie's and to go by Rainbow and all these places. So I love bars. I think they're beautiful spaces, and I would like to open one day that creates this world again. And I wonder, do bars still have meaning to y'all? Do you ever imagine creating a bar space, or does the bar hold its power still for y'all? Do you think of that as a way of giving back to the community as we get older, fashioning bars after our knowledge of what we've learned growing up in this crazy world?
I think Jesus needs to start a banda bar. Yes!
Yeah,
You can call it Narco.
But it has to have like a little neon with like just the eye winking with like a really long eye. Because I don't want the feds to fuck my shit up.
And that's what I mean. Like, if you were young and driving down the road and you did see that neon eye winking, that's your magical space that you're creating.
Wow.
I would. There was a place in El Paso called the Whatever Lounge, and the Whatever Lounge. The Whatever Lounge is wonderful because this idea of promise that you talk about a finding, right? Like, for me, the Whatever Lounge was such a place to say like, globalization fucking happened to us, and we survived it, and like we meet here because this is like, these are the conditions that our visas and our passports and our jobs and our commuting across a bridge look like. And so the best nights at the Whatever Lounge were on a Tuesday. It was like a Tuesday, but there was a show called Samantha's Travestis. And I love it because travestis on their sign for a while was travesty, which fucking like, gente, yes. But it's interesting that you pose it as a would you ever consider opening your own bar, because leaving undergraduate, going into a graduate program, I had a moment where I was like, well, I could do grad school, or what if? And the dream was always like, what if you like opened a bar, and like what if you did that, and what if it was like just for like brown people, what if people of color, and what if different kinds of IDs were accepted at the door? Because one thing that I found a lot for a while, I didn't have like a Texas ID. I just had my resident alien card, and there were some bars where like you pull that out and they were like, we don't know if this is real, and it's like, this is very fucking real. I had to go through an interview for this shit. This is very real.
And that's their choice to do that.
Yeah.
That's a business specific policy.
Yes.
They have to, like, by law, they can take these, but they can set their own policies.
Right.
So that means that's business's specific policy.
Yeah. So even for me, like that border crossing of the bouncer, like how cool would it be to fucking like dismantle and like disturb that, right? That expectation, and to be like, a lot of things can be IDs, and they look different for a lot of different people. So.
It's interesting because to your question, I think, well, that would be cheaper, actually. The more affordable route to create a queer space is through a bar in Austin right now.
Yeah.
Because with property being as expensive as it is, that's the only way you can still turn a profit and do the weird art. So.
But it is also interesting to, like, as I don't know, like, and I love gay bars, and the history and the presence of them like cannot be overstated. But more and more, maybe as I get older, I notice, you know, like substance abuse and trauma and how like deeply enmeshed that is in all our queer community. And so I think there's something exciting too about maybe moving away from bars and alcohol like being the core.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the alcohol too. When it was a hiding, safe place for us, the alcohol got rid of the pain.
Yeah,
So it is
exactly.
that transition too of different spaces create, and that's what I mean. Like, if you were to open a space, you would offer this new space, which you do already, that takes it away from the booze. It takes it away, and it is more of an artistically focused.
Poppers and Earl Grey.
Yes. The new depression.
That's also such a good like fragrance. Like this. Little poppers and Earl Grey behind the ear.
Yeah, actually, the thing that I keep hearing, and that I've seen throughout the last several years in Austin, is the artists and the gay spaces move into a place because it's affordable and because it allows you to have freedom to be yourself and to do the things that you want to pursue without having to worry about getting a day job or, you know, going into a more corporate occupation. As new spaces, which they'll always develop, people will always coalesce and find some kind of a space. As the underground and queer culture finds a new space, it's always the cutting edge driving force behind whatever the new mainstream boring trend becomes. Like, every hipster you see, every straight male hipster you see in Austin 10 years ago was not wearing the same thing I see, you know, my gay friends wearing at that time. If what I'm saying makes sense, like the things that you guys push forward that is just natural and amazing in a queer space gets co-opted, taken over, and then pushed out again. So my question is, how much responsibility is on the community to either dig in your heels and not be pushed out, to fight back, or to find a way to make the place really profitable so that you can either own the space and not have a lease that's going to go up, or to be able to afford those changes, because inevitably whatever new queer space gets created, it's a guarantee that's going to be the new hot thing. That's going to be the cool place where it starts out underground, it starts out just the queer community, but little by little, that's where straight girls feel safe, and that's then are trickled in by more open straight guys, and that's just the thing that I see over and over and over again, because all of the places that are and have been home for all of you have been home for me too, and I'm watching the places I love being destroyed, and my friends not having a place, and people I love not having a place, and I don't have the financial means to do anything about it, and so I'm at a loss, you know, as a poor person. What do we do? I mean, because it's all kind of tied together. That's a heavy thing to throw.
I'll also take Cassidy's comment and question, and then we'll do like a final round of responses and wrap up.
I was just going to say something that's been rolling around in my brain a lot. Well, first of all, I have a dream wish to start, Ambrose and I, my husband-wife, beloved husband-wife, and I have a dream wish to start a queer community center in Austin. Huge, big, crazy dream. If you're ever interested, please come talk to me. But our idea for that is so that there would be all sorts of elements, drag spaces, performance spaces, everything, meeting spaces, and then it would be very coalitional. And part of trying to try this out is where I work, which is a really super white, gentrified, hipster place, the Brew and Brew. I am most often the only like visibly queer person there. But they've sort of put me in charge of the event space next door. And well, I put myself in charge, but I work my way over. But part of that is trying to see and work through different systems of these spaces that are rented out and how can we maximize profit so that spaces are used more often throughout the day and also a way that shares power and space and community. And so I'm also thinking and reaching out to other people who have spaces and like, how can we create networks of spaces and availability to have events so that it's not on the onus isn't on one person to have a lease or to own a place, etc. But rather, how can we create these different structures that are more communal and coalitional and sustainable, which is super rough and difficult, I understand. But so if you're looking for a space to do a thing, please talk to me. If you have thoughts and ideas, please talk to me. But it's just that's sort of one thing that I've been thinking through and trying to make connections with people and reach out to say like, hey, please come, do your work where I can get it to you on the super cheap. So anyway, that's there.
Right. That's Cassidy Browning.
Hi, Cassidy Browning.
So maybe we'll just do one quick go round of like your final thoughts, and then we can hang out for a little bit and people can talk one-on-one. But actually, let's start on the other end.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to pass.
Okay.
I'm still thinking of my response.
I guess two things I thought were like it's so painful, and there's a lot of like grief in this experience of things being temporary and migratory, and then but on the other side of that, I think it would be nice to think about also the ways that like we can create temporary utopias, and those are kind of like so much more inherently queer in that they're not gonna become institutionalized, they're going to be what they are, and then they go. And then the other thing, thinking of like, Paul and I have this studio space over at the Off Center that's like a squat in an attic, basically. And the Off Center is also not long for this world, and that's so sad. That space is so awesome. It's like a home to the Rude Mex Theater Company and artist studios, and lots of great performances happen there. And we were talking like, what could we do to make the landlords not want to like take back the space? Like, I was like, could we like use feces or? Like, no, there's already a lot of feces in that space.
Non-consensual.
But I think like I think of it sometimes. I don't know if I heard Jack Halberstam say this one time, or I made it up, but like I think of butch dykes. I've often thought of butch dykes historically as being sort of like the channel through which capitalism can't flow. Like it's like you can't market that, like that's not hot to like mainstream patriarchy. Joke, right? Yeah, it's like the opposite of sellable. It's the opposite of sex appeal. I mean, you know, we all know that that's not true, but like it's not marketable. So sometimes I think about ways that we can like resist the flow of capitalism through our bodies.
Butch-dykeness. So we have to design the space as a butch-dyke space.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, this whole home talk, at first I was like, question mark, when we first started talking, and then I was like, actually, quick thing, like, I grew up in Puerto Rico with a single mom and 3 older brothers, and I wanted to be just like the boys. And I guess there's no room for me to do that there, so I felt like I couldn't, so I came over here. And I went to a place called Gabby and Moe's, and I saw a band called Handful when I was 20 years old, and there was 5 Butch Dykes rocking, and I was like, home. Somehow I feel like Austin has and will always have something, and we just have to find it and do it. That's all. But Austin is home. It will be. We can win this one. Come on. Don't let the Trader Joe's win.
Yeah, I also feel like passing. I mean, I'm just in the fight right now to like not let Trader Joe's win. I'm immersed in it.
Is that what's happening as SVTs?
Oh no, guns.
Oh, who knows?
Oh, okay.
I actually don't know, but I mean, anyone can come and pick my brain after the panel if you really want the gossip, but I'll pass the choice right now.
And I'm ever the optimist. I feel like I'm hopeful that the youth who are coming up and have all this energy, like I'll reference the Black Lives Matter movement, that kind of energy and thought towards putting together spaces, because we're not about making lots of money. That's never been like a big thing on the queer agenda. It's more like getting the art out there, sharing community space. But perhaps there's a new influx happening with a different way of thinking, because we really do. I think owning space is important, but it's not a priority, and a lot of us don't have any money, so that's really. But I feel like I'm not about the bars and the alcohol so much as community spaces where we can share art and do that type of thing. And I'm hoping that the next crew, or the crew of folks that's coming up now, and the artists, young artists and young curators and such, will find a way to work through this all this crappy change that's happening, all the big money change that is going down. Because it's something's got to give. Something's got to give. And the other thing is that we're the queer community and the queer art scene. It's such a vibrant thing. It's such an important community to the rest of the world. I mean, we put so much stuff out there. The world wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for us doing what we do and being as crazy as we are. That's always going to happen. But it's more and more of a struggle, because we're not thinking like, oh, how do we make the next million, with this thing. But I feel like the magic will prevail, because we're special like that.
So to add to that,
yes,
I would say parting thoughts. More. I'm about maximalism. I am. I'm about
use our partner.
I'm not ashamed. I'm a fashion hoarder. I can't help myself. But I'm about maximalism. I'm about use every strategy available. I'm about the magic of DIY. Definitely, so many of those spaces have been so meaningful to me as like a queer teenager, as a young person. I'm like, those were vital spaces. And definitely the temporary autonomous queer spaces, the potential in all these warehouses that get transformed with cardboard glory holes, or which, more of that, please. And then I also see, we also need the permanent spaces. We also need, we need the totally scrappy DIY. We need that always. We also need, we also do actually need to make money. I feel like we do actually need sustainable models. It's hard to be an organizer. It's hard to keep going, and it's I want to find ways to make that happen. We need more of everything. More of everything, but especially keeping the joy of queer freedom alive. Not like a totally mainstreamed queer culture. That doesn't feel vibrant. What else did I have? I don't know. I think of myself as like a multi-space dweller, like a person who really, I'm like, it's not one space. I have to go to all these different spaces to like feel at home. So I'm like, maybe that's the maximalist thing. It's like, we need it all. We need everything. And we need money. Please make some money rain down from the sky.
There's plenty of lesbian and gay people out there with a ton of money here in Austin. Tons of them. Tons of them. I promise you, I assure you, I know many.
All right, I'll take an introduction.
They're not here. Why aren't they here?
Oh, they want to go to the lawn
insiders.
center wearing a gown.
But they're out there, and they're you have to draw them out.
Right.
So you need to figure out ways to do that.
Force them out of their homes.
We just all
Take
show
all
them
their
on their
shit.
doorstep and like
And
do
I want to
performance
walk in a
their
fucking
yard
dog time to one of those gowns.
Right now is the perfect time because all the stock market's about to crash. They want to take their money out. They want to invest it in something. They don't necessarily have to make money because they pay too much in taxes anyway. They want to find tax.
They're also all about to be running marathons, so their homes will be empty for a while.
That's it.
Like, I'm all about getting where you fit in, girl. Like, make a way. Pero, like, I don't know. For me, really, the biggest thing and the thing that I think has inevitably, and it's kind of a testament of like festivals like this. And I've been like sitting here. This is my first outsider, but every once in a while I'll glance over to the screen and I'll look at like all of these like pictures from like all of these like wonderful people who like some of whom I see in this room, and there's something to be said about like one like the inevitability of like that kind of queer magic, that like that kind of just like survival base. We have to make it, and God damn it, like we will find a way. Like we just have to, and we will, and we can, and we do. And when we can't, like someone picks up after us and takes us with them too. And I think there's something really, really important too about like finding home in other people. There's been something that's been really nice about every time I see like whatever lounge or something El Paso related. And I think my day job is I'm a high school teacher. And I have students. I have two students who graduated last year, and they're both Latinos, first generation, going to college, and like I get messages from them, and none of it has been about like school. It's all been like, hey, just so you know, I just came out, so there you go. And I'm like, I know. And it's been a lot of like interesting like coaching through queerness. I had a student who texted me 2 nights ago because he went to his first drag show. And he was also like, they're all gonna like Celine Dion, and I'm like, who's that? And I was like, never mind, girl. But there's something to creating a lineage, right? Like for those of us who are like, I don't ever want to have children. That's not me.
Yeah.
But how do we create a lineage through our magics and through our just willingness to fucking stay?
Yeah.
And I was like, you being a teacher, like that, you're making a home already. Like that is your bar. That is your. I would have loved to have had you.
I was thinking the same thing. Exactly.
That's your contribution right there. You know, it doesn't need the bar. It doesn't need like that kid needs you. That's the home.
I had a senior last year. She walked in and she'd never done this, but she was about to graduate. And she walks in and she goes, "Hey, I'm about to leave, so I feel like I can say this now." And I was like, "What's up?" And she walks in and she goes, "Hey, girl."
So, yeah. That's awesome.
for me, I think that, you know, obviously we're seeing more and more of our spaces go away, more and more of our art. I mean, you know, when the spaces go away, so does the art. You know, and I mean, it's going to live somewhere, but it may not live here anymore. And it is a very sad fact that in order to stay in Austin, especially in the spaces that we're used to being, we're going to have to figure out how to monetize and make money and be a part of the capital if we want to stay in Austin. The other option is to take our fight and to take our art to, you know, Manor and all of the you know, go further east to where all of the queers and the color folks, everybody's moving out who can't live here anymore, who've been forced out by gentrification. They're going out further out. So we could take what we've got and go set up camp there, put down stakes there, and make that space our own. And a lot of people are doing that. I know venue owners who can't pay their rent here anymore, but they're going to go open up a bar in Bastrop, or they're going to go open up a bar in Manor. And there's something to be said for that, but there's also something to be said for, you know, the queer bombs and the GayBiGayGays and, you know, the Cheer Up Charlies and the people that are doing it, the Bookwomen, you know, who are still trying to make it work. And, you know, we need more of that. And you know, God bless you for teaching students and for being so, you know, out and open. And, fabulous. You know, I mean, I just think that is, you know, we're going to have to take, somebody said something about the youth. I mean, it is like the Black Lives Matters. I mean, that's what we need. And we need more people fighting for what we believe in and teaching them what we believe in. So it's basically either fight or fly and find some other place, I think. But for me, I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to keep slugging it out and trying to make it work. So.
Thank you so much to our conferencers and to all of you. Especially to Kern and PJ for welcoming us. And I will soon be leaving Austin, but when I come back, I really am excited to go to Cassidy's Center and to Narco and to Belgrade and Poppers, like all these new places are going to open in
Can I make a closing comment myself? Because this is the last conference on the couch of the festival. And I said this last year and it held true this year. I love all parts of the festival, but this really is my favorite part of it. Just having everyone here and sharing their stories and sharing their ideas is so fabulous. And to have it in my home space, PJ and I's home space, makes it very special. And also, like I just feel like the sort of deep souls in the room and the ideas like seeping into our house in this way that is really beautiful and like will stay with us all year. So I thank everyone, including the audience, for like being part of that. Thank you for sharing your stories and your ideas with us. Yeah, thank you. And the conference on the couch will be online soon?
Yeah, I'm trying to post them. I'll be posting them on our Vimeo page and also our YouTube page, just the audio. I think it's kind of cool to just listen to the audio. So even though we are filming also, but it'll be audio, so feel free to share it and listen to it, reference it, whatever you like. So.
Thank you. The walking tour starts soon, so if you want to